What's going on, everybody? I'm Terrence, and this is Bank Shipping. Good morning, YouTube. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. We got unloaded from our customer load up in Pennsylvania. Got unloaded this morning and was headed back and grabbed another load. Still in Pennsylvania, heads to Richmond, Virginia tomorrow. So we are here at that shipper. Worked out great because it's actually taking me back home, and it wasn't too far off the beaten path on the way home. So easy load. I think it's only like 3,700 pounds or something like that. It's going to take up most of my deck space, but it's pretty light, so I ain't going to complain there. Get some good fuel mileage again. Y'all know how I love light loads and good fuel mileage. So I believe the guy just went inside and, checked in and everything. I think the guy said there's one truck that he's got to load up. And then once he loads that truck up, he will load me up. So once we get unloaded, I don't think you're allowed to film at this facility, which is fine. Once I get loaded and strapped down and everything, I got to stop and get some fuel. So I'll show you guys the load once I stop and get some fuel, since I can't do it here. So once I do that, I'll see y'all in a little bit. All right, guys, we are in Bedford. Still stopped and get some fuel, so we're fueling up the old girl. This is the load that I have. It's just a little boom lift, only weighs 3,700 pounds. Nice and easy, nice and light. Easy to secure. 2 chains. Like I said, it's only 3,700 pounds, so only needs 2 chains. So I got me a chain right here in the back, got a chain in the front. It's got nice chain points, and then of course got my good old strap over the bucket to keep Mr. DOT man happy. Everybody's got, different. People probably ask why I got my slack like this. Everybody does it different. I do it different every time, depending on how much slack or how much chain I have left. I had a lot of chain left, of course, so sometimes I might wrap it around. Truck going by, sorry about that. Sometimes I might wrap it around the binder and then bungee it, but since I had so much chain left, I just come over here and I wrap it around my rub rail and I bring it back and use a bungee to tighten it up and make sure it's not going flat loose going down the road. So yeah, we're going to continue to get some fuel. Once we're filled up, we're going to get out of here and we are going to head to the house. Okay, YouTube family, we got fueled up and headed down the road. We safely made it back to the yard. So here I am parked, and we are done for the day. Like I said, this load delivers down in outside of Richmond tomorrow morning. So we will head to the house and relax, and then we will hit it back in the morning. I'll catch up with y'all then. All right, guys, we are here at our drop off in Richmond, well, outside of Richmond and Glen Allen. We got everything unchained. It's ready to be offloaded. We're just waiting for this guy right here to switch the loader bucket to the forks so that he can get this thing off. So once he does that, we have another load to head to back at home from one of our customers that empties tomorrow morning. Up in Maryland, just outside of Baltimore and Aberdeen. So once he gets this thing off here, we're already fueled up and everything, so we'll head out and we'll head up there. So I will talk to you guys once I get up there. All right, guys, so we got our load dropped off in Glen Allen. Then we got back home to one of our customers to pick up our load the preload for in the morning that goes to Aberdeen, Maryland. So I got a nice parachute load, a nice full load of 8-foot tall skids of insulation. So that should really suck the fuel mileage down in the morning. But we got a 10 a.m. Appointment time. But this place, sometimes they're strict on their appointment times. Sometimes if you get there a little early, they'll go ahead and unload you. So my plan is to get there a little bit earlier than 10 o'clock because I have another load I got to get back to preload for Monday. So if everything goes good, I can get unloaded early up in Aberdeen, get back, preload for Monday, and have a early Friday. So that is the plan. So with that being said, I'm going to pack up for the night, head to the house, and I'll catch y'all in the morning. All right, guys. Well, I got to my my appointment about an hour and 15 minutes early. They told me to go ahead and come on back here, and about 10 minutes later, 2 forklifts came out and they tag teamed and got me unloaded pretty quickly. So got my straps and tarps put away. Now we're going to head to the next one. See y'all there. All right, guys, we have made it back to our pickup from our customer. This load goes to Southern Virginia on Monday, and I had a bunch of people asking about tarping. So I figured, you know, this is a tarp load, so I'll go ahead and show you guys how I tarp. I tarp about 90% of my loads coming from both of my customers, so pretty familiar with doing the tarp job. It's one of those things that everybody does differently, but there's a couple things that, you know, will help you tarp a little bit better, or some things you do need to know about tarping. I already got my tarps rolled out for the length. This customer doesn't necessarily need the back wrapped, so I just have it sitting right there on the back or whatever, you know, so the back can be exposed, or so I already got them rolled out for the length and everything. But all depends on how you roll out your tarps or how you fold your tarps. That's going to make it a little easier. I roll my tarps and fold them up. I guess next video I can do is how I roll my tarps up. Everybody does that different too, but I roll them out or roll them up so that I can, you know, roll them out pretty easily and efficiently. You know, just roll them down the middle and then fold them out. You know, one thing that you do want to remember is you always want to work back to front. That way your front tarp goes over top of your rear tarp, and you don't worry about the wind catching the back tarp and pulling it up. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You know, if you do have a situation where you end up doing that by accident or something like that, you know, you can always throw a strap over top of it or something like that to try to keep it down. Some guys put their straps over top of their tarps, you know, and then, or they'll tarp everything, you know, and then they'll put their straps up over top of it to hold it down. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of that. I like it with my straps underneath the tarp. You know, it gives it a little bit more of a cleaner look. So that is the way I do mine. This tarp right here that I have on the back is a little bit of an older tarp. I really just use it for if I just have a short space to cover up or a small load to cover up, because it's got some rips and stuff up front, you know, like with some of these. So I try not to use it too often unless I can fold those corners under, since I can't really use those eyelets. So once you got your back tarp all situated and you got it in the place that you want, you know, what I normally do is I take my bungees and I'll get it to where it's setting in a spot so it doesn't move while I'm doing the rest of the stuff. There's a million different ways you can keep your bungees. I found it best to, you know, cut some PVC pipe and stretch my bungees out on there. Keeps it nice and neat. So first thing I do is, you know, I always get the front one. the front bungee on there. And you know, it might be kind of loose, but what I'll do is, you know, once I get it bungee down, I pull it back so the tarp is nice and tight. One thing about tarping is you'll do a lot of walking around. You'll be jumping across your trailer, walking around your trailer, you know, setting your bungees and getting your tarp right. So get a lot of exercise this way. So now that I got those on there, I'll pull that back, make sure that it's tight. Try to get all the wrinkles and everything out. The less wrinkles you have, the less likely of the chance you have of the wind catching it. It doesn't really matter so much for something like this because it's a low load, so it's not going to be catching that much wind in the first place. But you know, it's always good practice to do it on everything, you know, do everything the same way. You know, that's like, you know, throwing your straps across the tarp. You know, like I said, it's not something that I do, that I like to do, but I do it occasionally. You know, sometimes if you got something that's tall and low, and you got a low spot and a void space in there, and you know, you don't want the wind to catch and it's just going to bubble up that tarp. So I'll put a strap down on there to cover it up, or to pull it down, say the least. So after I get that front bungee on there, on that back tarp, you know, I'll go ahead and I'll fold my tarps under, you know, make it nice and neat. And you know, I might not record the whole thing, just because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to my tarps, because I think that's one thing that speaks about, you know, your business. You want to look good when you pull up to the customer. You know, I'm not only representing my business, I'm also representing, you know, my customer who ships this stuff. So I take that stuff pretty seriously. So, you know, I don't want to be looking like I don't know what I'm doing when I pull up. So, you know, if I cut this video after I get this back tarp on, that's why, because it does take me a little while. I do take a little bit of extra time to make them look decent, you know, nice and even and tucked in. So once I get it tucked in or whatever, I pull it back just to make sure that everything is nice and tucked in, rolled up. Like I said, you know, it's a lot of walking back and forth. So then I'll go over here and I'll do the same thing to this side. I'll tuck it in, and I kind of basically just throw it up in there at first just to get it up in there, and then I'll come back and make sure that it's nice and even after I get everything rolled up in there. So, you know, one thing you try to keep in mind, and you know, I'll have to readjust here in a little bit, but one way you can tell if your tarp is even, depending on what size tarp you have, is how much of a gap you have, you know, between this line right here and your rings and your rub rail. You know, if you can see they're pretty close to the rub rail on this side, as opposed to the other side, they're not as close. Sometimes it don't matter how well you get the tarp, you know, even, it will never be even because the load might be on your trailer uneven. So like for instance, you know, this load, if you guys can see, it's shifted a little more to this side, to the left, than what it is to the right. So it's going to be more of a void space on that side of the trailer than what it is on the right side of the trailer than what it is going to be on the left. So that's fine. You know, you get it nice and bungee down good, it will all it'll stay still. It's not going to matter that much. So now that I got that, normally what I do is I'll just pull this back. And the thing I hate the most about this tarp right here is the eyelet's gone right there, so I can't really hook anything to it. But what I normally do is I just kind of hook it in there because it's got a hole, just to hold it. And normally what I do is afterwards, and this just kind of gets it even, gets it tight, and afterwards, once I'm done, I come back and I'll fix this up all nice and neat and everything like that. I can actually probably pull it back a little more. And so, you know, now that I got it pulled back, I'll come up here to my front tarp and make sure that I have enough of my front tarp covering my back tarp. You know, you don't have to have a lot, but I found it best, you know, you have a good 6-8 inches, you know, on that front tarp over top of the rear tarp, and it sets pretty good. So then I'll come up to my front tarp and, you know, repeat said process. I'll pull this over here. And you'll see, you know, after you do it so many times, it becomes second nature. You know, especially if you run a lot of the same stuff. You know, I run this stuff all the time. So I know kind of where my tarps need to be. You know, where I need to start them and things like that. For whether I got, you know, 3 bundles and that's it, or I got, you know, more than 3 bundles where they have some bundles stacked on top. You know, I know where my D-rings and my eyelets are going to be on my tarp, so I can kind of gauge things. So once I've got that front tarp put on there, try to make sure it's even, and I always look to see how much of this I have over top of the load, or in front of the load. Now granted, these are steel tarps. Both of these tarps are steel tarps, so they don't have a flap. Your lumber tarps will have a flap for your drop. You know, whether it's a 6-foot drop, 8-foot drop, 4-foot drop, whatever it is, they'll have a flap in the front. That'll be right here, you know, and you fold it down for your drop. But these are steel tarps, so they don't have that drop. They're just a square or a rectangle, depending on what you got. These tarps are 18 by 20 is what these steel tarps are, the ones that I carry. Since I tarp a lot and I tarp a lot of different things, I carry a lot of tarps. You know, these are 6 foot. These two are not 6 foot. These two are steel tarps. You know, the 2 I have setting up here inside my gooseneck, they're 6-foot drop lumber tarps. So they have the flap, and then these 2 right here are 8-foot drop tarps. Because I do, you know, my insulation customer, their skids are 8 foot tall, some are 6 foot tall, so that's why I got 6-foot drop and 8-foot drop. You know, I could get away with just having 8-foot drop, you know, and then if I got a 6-foot tall load, I can just fold them under like I do these. But I bought 6-foot drop tarps first when I first started, and then I got the customer that needed 8-foot drops, so then I got 8-foot drops. And actually these 8-foot drops were given to me, so that's even better. You know, because tarps get quite expensive. So what I do in the front is I normally, with this, there's a, you know, they're setting on boards on dunnage, so there's a space, I don't know if you guys can see it, there's a space under here that I can tuck my tarp under. And what that does is it allows me to get a nice tight fit up front. So I can see that I'm going to have some slack up here in the front, so that what that means is I can pull this back a little bit. So that means I'll have more room back here to pull back, and if I wanted to, I could pull back there. So what I do with the front is I'll take 2 bungees and I'll come up underneath of it, and I apologize if the GoPro's not exactly in the manner that's best to see, but I'll try to explain what I'm doing as I go. I will take my bungee, and that's why I use this one in the front, because it has good eyelets, and I will connect to an eyelet that's at the very front of the tarp, and I will pull it back under, and I will stretch that bungee. Oh, it came off. I will stretch that bungee back to pull that tight. So now I have a nice little area that's nice and tucked in. And that'll eliminate some of the wind coming back, or some of the wind getting underneath there. So I'll find this eyelet here, and I'll tuck that under. And I'll pull it back tight. So boom. Now I have a nice little tight bundle right there. Well, not tight now, but it will once I pull it back. So I'll come back here, and with this stuff I kind of got to be careful, because at the top here, these edges are at the front and the back, the edges are pretty sharp from the edges of the metal. What a lot of times you can do is you can put blankets or some type of felt pieces. I normally keep some felt pieces to put on top of these corners to make sure that I don't rip my tarps. But in this case, I touched the corners and they weren't too terribly sharp. So I said it was fine, and you know, I didn't need that stuff. So, but you know, I just take a little bit of extra care and extra time to make sure that when I pull my tarp, it doesn't rip. I think the camera came down a little bit when I jumped off my trailer. So now I'll go ahead and pull that back tight. And I'll pull this side tight. Now, a lot of times what I try to do doesn't really work on something this short, but I'll try to match up these lines right here. You know, I'll try to match these lines with that line, but because the way the tarps are, they're two different tarps, you know, made by two different manufacturers. They're not going to be exactly the same. Now, if you buy two matching tarps, of course, they'll be the same and it'll be easier to match them. But that's no biggie, you know, it still works either way. So, you know, now that I've done that, I'll repeat the same process of tucking under. You know, the front can be, for me, can be a little bit of a hassle sometimes, because I pull this back under. It's a bunch of stuff bunched up, you know, a bunch of the tarp bunched up right there. So it can be a bit of a hassle sometimes, but you know, that's when you just take a little bit of extra time and make sure you fix them right. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of lay it up there, because I kind of got an idea of where my eyelets are going to be. I'll just lay it up there, and then when I get to the back, I'll bring it down and I'll see where my eyelets are, and then I'll just follow suit with that. Pull it down and tuck it under. It's got me kind of sweating in here. And you know, I got a little high spot in the top, so you know, the eyelets will be a little higher right there in the middle than where they are everywhere else, because of the boxes that are sitting in the middle there. So I kind of get it just like that. You know, I'll fold it over and stuff like that. And most of the time you'll have, if I can find one, you'll have an eyelet or a D-ring or something right in the front from where it's folded over. And that is what I'll use to kind of get everything tight up front. You know, I'll run a bungee from both sides. So now that I got that, I'll make sure that this is even as possible. Now, of course, since it's got the boxes, like I said, it's not going to be totally even, but you try to get it as even as you can. And so now that I have that, keep the same step on the other side. I'll just kind of throw it up there. This is really nice because, you know, the bundles are open inside, and I can kind of just throw the tarp down in there, the stuff that I'm rolled up, or that I'm rolling up. And then once I get to the front, you know, I'll make sure that it's nice and good. I'll find my eyelet, which is in here somewhere. There it is. There's my D-ring, so I know that that's gonna be right there. And I'll tidy that up. So now that I know that this line up here is gonna be the one that I hook my bungee to, so I'll kind of pull that and fold. And then once I kind of get the gist of it, you know, I'll pull it back tight like that. And so it looks kind of sloppy now, but you know, what I do is once I start bungeeing, I'll tuck under everything real nice when I'm putting it as I go with the bungees. So now that I have the front tarp on, I'll go back here and I'll hook to this eyelet in the back and pull that as tight as I can. And what that's going to do is show me where, you know, my that's going to show me where I'm going to be able to do everything. That'll be the final set of the tarp. So now that that's there, and I usually on that right there, on the transition from the front tarp to the back tarp, I normally don't try to pull too far back. I try to get it to pull down. So as you can see, I'm going through the stake pocket and around it and up to the eyelet. So what that does is it pulls back a little bit, but it mostly pulls down. And since it mostly pulls down, it's going to keep this from flapping too much. One thing you could do is you could throw a strap over here to keep that from flapping. But you'll see after I put bungees on everything, this will be a lot tighter than what it is now once I readjust everything like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and since you guys got the gist of it, I'm gonna go ahead and put my bungees on, and then once my bungees are on, I'll come back and show you what I did. All right guys, so we got loaded, got tarp down, got our bungees on. I tried to bungee 2 different ways on each different side to show you guys the 2 different ways that I bungee. Like I said, you know, when you're tarping and everything, everybody does their bungees a little bit different. So I tried the best ways that I could, you know, do a couple different ways. You know, one way is, which happens a lot right here, you know, where I went outside of the rub rail, and that's one bungee. You know, I use mainly I use 31 inch and 21 inch. That's the main bungees that I use. Occasionally, I mean, I have a couple 15 inches that I use. I don't use them very often, but sometimes, you know, you go outside of the rub rail, you know, like on that first one right there. And then the other ones, you know, I went underneath the chain spool, and that's, you know, still one bungee with the 31 inch. And what that does is that kind of keeps right here, keeps that tight up against there, so it doesn't flap out or anything, you know, when you're going down the road. So that's what I did on this side. I just used the 31 inch bungees and just went from, and what I do is I go, basically you'll see 2 hooks on each D-ring. So basically what that does is it pulls to both sides. And so it keeps a nice even pull on those D-rings to where you're not pulling just one direction. There are some occasions where you do need to just pull one direction, but on this I'm trying to pull, you know, down. So it kind of goes to the left and to the right and down if you put 2 hooks, you know, on one D-ring. So on this side, I still have 2 hooks on one D-ring, but instead I used my 21 inch bungees and X them. So, you know, basically right here is a 21 inch bungee, and right here is 21 inch bungee, and right here is 21 inch bungee, and so on. But they're X'd in the middle, so that way that they're pulling in both directions on those D-rings. So sometimes I end up having to do that, like, you know, if a 31 inch won't get to both D-rings, you know, if it's a little bit too tall, sometimes I'll have to use 2 21 inch. And I like X'ing them because, like I said, it gets that pull on both directions and downforce, and it keeps your tarps nice and tight. So, you know, and back here, it was a little lower, so I just used 21 inches right there and did the same thing. Just one 21-inch going from one D-ring to the other. So that is mainly how I tarp. When you got something a little taller, you're pulling your bungees a little bit further down. A lot of times when I have my insulation, since it is tall, sometimes what I like to do is I like to pull down and back if I don't X them, but most of the time I do X my bungees, just because it gives me a little bit of peace of mind. When you tarp, I tell people all the time, when you first start tarping, it might look good when you first get it tarped, but you never really know how good of a job your tarp job is until you start driving. It could look nice and pretty, but then you start driving and it starts flapping in the wind because you didn't get it tarp bungee down tight enough. So you really never know how good your tarp job is until you start going 70 miles an hour down the highway. But that's one of the things that I take pride in is tarping. So I take a little bit extra time and I do a little bit of extra bungees and things like that in order to get my tarp job to look to where I think the standards are. So with that being said, we are done for the week. It is Friday, so we're done. This load drops in Southern Virginia on Monday. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. And as always, stay prayed up, grind hard, and stay humble.